big musical event dedicated to their lead singer, Freddie Mercury, who died last night of AIDS. There have been tributes to his talent and his courage from friends and from fans.
On August 9th, 1986, 120,000 people gathered at Knebworth Park to witness what they thought was just another Queen concert. Nobody knew they were watching Freddie Mercury perform live for the last time. The cameras were rolling. Massive screens captured every angle. But when the show ended, someone realized a catastrophic mistake. Nobody had pressed record. Freddie Mercury's final performance, one of the greatest shows in rock history, was ever officially filmed. That's just one of the strange facts about that night, because what happened behind the scenes at Knebworth was even more shocking than what the crowd saw on stage. The recording that never happened. Here's the part that still haunts everyone who was there. Queen had just played 2 sold-out nights at Wembley Stadium. Both shows were professionally filmed with multiple camera crews, high-quality audio recording, the works. Those concerts from July 11th and 12th were captured perfectly. Every note, every moment. Beautiful footage that still exists today. Then came Knebworth, August 9th. The biggest show of the entire Magic Tour. 120,000 people.
120,000 people attended the concert, and it took St. John's ambulance men some time to reach him.
Though some claim the real number was closer to 200,000. Traffic jammed for 5 miles. People camping outside the venue the night before. The gardens of Knebworth Park absolutely flooded with humanity. The stage setup was massive. 160 feet wide with 2 long walkways extending into the crowd. 8.6 miles of cable powering everything. A 20 by 30-foot video screen that was revolutionary for 1986. Lighting rigs weighing tons. 5,000 amplifiers creating a wall of sound so powerful that villages miles away complained about the noise. And somebody forgot to hit record. Not completely. There are fragments. News crews filmed the first few songs for their evening broadcasts. Some Dutch fans bootlegged footage by pointing a camera at the big screen from the back of the audience. Grainy, shaky, barely watchable, but no professional multi-camera recording exists of Freddie Mercury's final bow. Henry Lytton Cobbold, who owned Knebworth House and watched the concert as a young man, later said something that perfectly captures the tragedy. Can you believe that at Freddie Mercury's last concert, The Great Showman, no one actually pressed record? His words carry the weight of knowing what was lost. One of the most important moments in rock history. Gone. The audio recording exists. Crystal clear. Every song, every note. But without the visual element, without seeing Freddie command that stage one final time, something essential is missing. This wasn't just any performance. This was Freddie Mercury at his peak stage presence, performing for the largest UK crowd Queen would ever face. And nobody thought to preserve it properly. What makes this even stranger is how meticulously everything else was planned. The helicopter arrival, the stage design, the lighting choreography, the set list, every detail had been obsessed over. Yet somehow, in all that planning, the one thing that would have mattered most to future generations was overlooked. But the missing footage is only the beginning of what makes Knebworth strange. The doctor's warning, nobody listened to. The morning of August 9th started with a phone call Freddie didn't want to receive. His doctor, calling with bad news about his throat. Freddie had been pushing his voice hard throughout the Magic Tour. 26 shows across Europe in just 8 weeks. Budapest, Stockholm, Paris, Leiden, Mannheim, Cologne, Berlin. The schedule was brutal. And Freddie's voice, that incredible 4-octave instrument, was showing the strain. That morning, his doctor examined his throat and delivered a stark warning. Severe inflammation, the kind that could cause permanent damage if he performed. The medical advice was clear. Cancel the show. Rest. Let the inflammation heal before attempting to sing again. Freddie refused. 120,000 people had bought tickets. Many had traveled from across Europe. Some had won their tickets in radio contests. Others had waited hours in phone queues when tickets went on sale. These were Queen's most devoted fans, the people who had been turned away from the sold-out Wembley shows. This concert had been added specifically for them. Freddie wasn't going to let them down. But the band knew. Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon all knew Freddie was struggling. So they did something they'd never done before. They prepared a backup set list, a shortened version with easier songs, tracks that wouldn't strain Freddie's voice as much, songs they could extend with instrumental sections if Freddie needed breaks. They didn't tell the audience. They didn't announce anything. They just had the backup plan ready, waiting to see if Freddie could make it through. What happened instead shocked everyone. As the show progressed, Freddie didn't use the backup set list. He sang everything, every difficult song, every high note. During Under Pressure, his voice cracked on a particularly challenging section. Instead of stopping or skipping to an easier song, he turned it into a moment. He got the crowd to sing with him, making the crack seem intentional, transforming a limitation into an interaction. During Bohemian Rhapsody at 8:17 p.m., Freddie did something he hadn't attempted in years. The song usually relied heavily on backing tracks for the operatic section, too complex to perform live in its entirety. But that night, Freddie sang parts of it live. Hitting notes that should have been impossible with an inflamed throat. The crowd went absolutely wild. Peter Freestone, Freddie's personal assistant, watched from the side of the stage. He knew about the doctor's warning. He knew Freddie was in pain. Years later, he described watching Freddie that night as both inspiring and terrifying. Inspiring because of Freddie's determination. Terrifying because he could see what it was costing him. The strange part isn't just that Freddie performed despite medical advice. It's that he gave one of his best performances ever, pushing through pain, turning limitations into strengths, making a struggling voice sound like a deliberate artistic choice. It was the mark of a true professional, someone who understood that the show must go on. But there was something else happening that night, something the audience couldn't see, something that would make the backstage atmosphere even more tense. John Deacon's breakdown. John Deacon was the quiet one. In 15 years with Queen, he'd built a reputation as the steady, calm presence. While Freddie brought the flamboyance, Brian the perfectionism, and Roger the energy, John was the rock, unflappable, professional, never causing drama. Which is why what happened 18 minutes before showtime shocked everyone who witnessed it. John Deacon threw his bass guitar across the dressing room. The Fender Precision bass spun through the air, nearly hitting Roger Taylor's drum tech. It crashed against the wall with a sound that stopped all conversation. Everyone froze. This wasn't Freddie having a pre-show tantrum. This wasn't Roger getting frustrated with equipment. This was John Deacon, the man who never lost his cool. He turned to Brian May, his face showing emotion nobody had seen before. "I can't do this anymore. It's too much." His voice was shaking, not with anger, with something deeper, something like grief. Brian tried to calm him down. "What's going on? What's wrong?" But John couldn't articulate it, or wouldn't. He just kept shaking his head, saying it over and over. "It's too much. I can't do this." The crew scrambled. They had 18 minutes before Queen was supposed to walk on stage. 18 minutes to get their bassist functional. The stage manager started preparing contingency plans. Could they delay? Could they perform without bass for a song or two? Then, just as suddenly as the breakdown started, John pulled himself together. He picked up his bass, checked it for damage, tested the tuning. When the call came to walk to the stage, he walked, face blank, professional mask back in place. What happened on stage makes the backstage breakdown even more remarkable. John Deacon played one of the best performances of his life. The bass lines were perfect, timing flawless. During Radio Gaga, he even did something unusual, adding extra fills that weren't in the standard arrangement. creating this pulsing, driving rhythm that elevated the entire song. Nobody in the audience would have guessed that 18 minutes earlier, their bassist had been falling apart. But here's what makes this moment strange. John seemed to know something the others didn't. Or maybe he felt something they weren't ready to acknowledge. Peter Hintz, Queen's chief roadie, later said that John's breakdown wasn't about the tour being hard. It was about the tour ending, about this being the last show. John somehow understood that Knebworth wasn't just another concert. It was the end of an era. And he was right. Queen would never tour again, never perform a full concert with Freddie Mercury again. Knebworth was it, the final bow. John Deacon seemed to sense that in a way the others didn't. His breakdown wasn't about stress, it was about goodbye. The tragedy in the crowd. While Queen performed on stage, while Freddie pushed through throat pain and John dealt with his emotional turmoil, something terrible was happening in the crowd, something that wouldn't be discovered until it was too late. Michael Jennings was 23 years old, a massive Queen fan. He'd won his ticket to Knebworth in a radio contest just 2 days earlier. His friend Sarah was with him. They'd traveled together, found a spot about 50 meters from the stage. Good position, close enough to see the massive video screens clearly, close enough to feel the energy. At 8:03 p.m., Queen started playing Who Wants to Live Forever.
Who wants to live forever?
The song Brian May had written for the Highlander soundtrack, the one with the 80-piece orchestra. Emotional, haunting, beautiful. Michael Jennings collapsed. Sarah saw it happen. 1 second he was standing there, singing along, having the time of his life. He'd been saying all night how this was the best concert he'd ever been to, how he couldn't believe he'd won tickets, how incredible Queen sounded live. Then he just fell. No warning, no grabbing his chest, just dropped. The crowd around them realized something was wrong. People started shouting for medics, trying to clear space. Security personnel pushed through the packed crowd. A medical team arrived within minutes. They started CPR immediately, tried everything they could. But Michael Jennings had suffered a massive cardiac arrest caused by an undiagnosed heart condition. The excitement of the concert, the massive crowd, the physical strain of standing in a packed venue for hours, all of it had triggered something in his heart that nobody knew was there. At 9:43 p.m., as Queen was performing Bohemian Rhapsody on stage, Michael Jennings was pronounced dead. The band didn't know. They couldn't have known. The tragedy happened in the middle of a crowd of 120,000 people. News didn't travel the way it does now. No social media. No instant communication. The band was on stage, focused on their performance, giving everything to the crowd. They had no idea that one of their fans was dying while they played. They found out after the show. The news hit them hard, Freddie especially. He'd always had this incredible connection with Queen's fans. He understood they weren't just an audience, they were part of the experience. The idea that someone had died during the show, during a song as emotional as Who Wants to Live Forever, it felt almost cosmically tragic. Michael Jennings' death led to significant changes in how large concerts handle medical emergencies. Better crowd management protocols, more medical teams stationed throughout venues, improved communication systems between security and medical staff, stricter attention to crowd density and crowd control. But in 1986, at Knebworth, all those systems were still developing. Michael Jennings became a tragic reminder that massive concerts carry massive risks, that in a crowd of 120,000 people, individual tragedies can unfold unnoticed. Sarah, his friend who was with him that night, later said something that captures the bittersweet nature of what happened. He died doing what he loved. Watching his favorite band, he kept saying it was the best night of his life. Then suddenly, it was his last. The tragedy adds another layer to why Knebworth feels so heavy in Queen's history. It wasn't just Freddie's final performance. It was also the place where a fan gave his life to the music. The disappearance after the show. Freddie Mercury was famous for his post-show celebrations. After concerts, he'd stay up for hours. partying with the crew, talking about the performance, dissecting what worked and what didn't, drinking champagne, laughing, holding court. It was part of his ritual, part of how he processed the adrenaline and energy of being on stage. Knebworth was different. The final song ended at 9:02 p.m. God Save the Queen played. Usually, this was when the band would milk the applause, take extra bows, interact with the crowd one last time. But Freddie did something unusual. He stood still, eyes closed, just stood there as the music played. When it ended, he bowed deeply to the crowd, said his final words. "Thank you, lovely people."
Goodbye! We love you!
Good night and sweet dreams. Then he was gone. Seconds after the last note, Freddie walked off stage and disappeared. No lingering, no celebration, just gone. The crew was shocked. This wasn't like Freddie at all. Peter Freestone, his personal assistant, went looking for him immediately. Something was wrong. He found Freddie in his private dressing room, sitting alone, still in his stage clothes, the famous white tank top and tight jeans. But he wasn't celebrating. He was just sitting there, staring at nothing. Peter noticed something else. Freddie's silver bracelet was missing, the piece of jewelry he'd worn to every single show since 1977. 9 years, hundreds of concerts. He never performed without it. It was his talisman, his good luck charm. But at Knebworth, he'd left it behind. A cleaner found it later, sitting on a table backstage. It was returned to Freddie, but the fact that he'd forgotten it seemed significant, like he was already somewhere else mentally, already moving away from this chapter of his life. Peter asked if Freddie was okay. Freddie nodded, but didn't speak. Then he said something that made Peter's blood run cold. "I don't know if I can do this. Not, I don't know if I can do another tour. Not, I don't know if I can keep performing. Just, I don't know if I can do this." Vague, ominous, like he was talking about something bigger than music. The helicopter was waiting to take them back to London. Freddie got in, sat by the window. The ride that should have been celebratory was silent. Peter Freestone later described watching Freddie during that helicopter ride. He sat staring out the window, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief, just watching the English countryside pass below, lost in thought. Roger Taylor had a similar experience. After the show, he went looking for Freddie, found him sitting alone in the dressing room before the helicopter ride. Freddie looked up and said something Roger would never forget. "Darling, I think I've given it my all." At the time, Roger thought Freddie just meant he'd given a great performance. Looking back, he realizes Freddie was saying goodbye, not just to touring, to performing live, to this part of his life. He knew Knebworth was the end. Even if he didn't say it explicitly, he knew. Roger Taylor still keeps a drumstick from that night in his studio, a physical reminder of their final show together. He's said in interviews that Knebworth haunts him, not because of anything that went wrong, but because of everything they didn't know, didn't understand, didn't appreciate in the moment. The strange part isn't just that Freddie disappeared after the show. It's that he seemed to be mourning something that hadn't happened yet, like he could feel the future closing in, like he understood that this moment, this performance, this night at Knebworth was the last gasp of something that could never be repeated. What they didn't know. Here's the strangest fact of all. At the time of Knebworth, Freddie Mercury didn't have an AIDS diagnosis. That wouldn't come until April 1987, 8 months after Knebworth. But there were signs. Signs that make looking back at that concert feel eerie. In 1982, Freddie had visited a doctor in New York about a spot on his tongue. The doctor examined it, told him to keep an eye on it. Didn't make a big deal. But looking back, that spot might have been an early symptom, 4 years before the official diagnosis. By 1986, Freddie had lost weight. Not dramatically, not enough to cause alarm, but enough that people close to him noticed. The British tabloids, especially The Sun, had started writing speculative articles about Freddie's health. Wild rumors. Nothing substantiated, but they were circling, sensing something. Freddie never publicly addressed the rumors in 1986. He deflected, made jokes, changed the subject. His sexuality was an open secret in the music industry, but he'd never confirmed anything publicly. And in 1986, being gay and potentially having AIDS was still shrouded in massive stigma. People were terrified, misinformed, cruel. The question that haunts everyone who was at Knebworth is simple. Did Freddie know? Not officially. He wouldn't get tested until the following year, but did he suspect? Did he have symptoms he wasn't talking about? Is that why he pushed himself so hard that night? Why he ignored his doctor's warning about his throat? Why he sang every difficult song, hit every high note, gave absolutely everything to that performance? Was Knebworth a goodbye he couldn't say out loud? Brian May has talked about this in interviews. He said the band didn't ask Freddie direct questions about his health. They sensed something was wrong but didn't push, didn't want to invade his privacy, respected his boundaries. In retrospect, Brian wishes they'd been more direct, more insistent. But, at the time, they operated on Freddie's terms. What we know for certain is that Freddie Mercury never performed live with Queen again after Knebworth. There were plans for more tours. Ideas floated, discussions about where they'd go next. But nothing materialized. The Magic Tour ended at Knebworth. And that was it. In 1987, after the diagnosis, Freddie channeled everything into the studio. The Innuendo album, his collaboration with Montserrat Caballé on Barcelona. He kept recording until the very end. His final recording session was May 22nd, 1991, A Winter's Tale, a beautiful, haunting song that appeared on the posthumous Made in Heaven album. Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991, 5 years and 3 months after Knebworth. Pneumonia caused by AIDS. He was 45 years old. The strange facts about Freddie Mercury's final concert aren't really about the technical failures or the missing footage, or even the tragic death in the crowd. The strangest fact is that nobody there knew they were watching history end. Nobody knew this was the last time Freddie Mercury would command a stage. Nobody knew that 120,000 people were witnessing the final bow of one of rock's greatest performers. What are your thoughts about these strange facts about Freddie's final concert? Share with us in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.